listening, keep learning. The Tom Daniel Show. Keep listening, keep learning. The Tom Daniel Show.
You're listening to The Tom Daniel Show, and I'm your host, Tom Daniel. I want to talk about a blues man that was so good he became a ghost story. Robert Johnson. The blues is probably the most significant musical form created anywhere in the world in the 20th century, and it absolutely came straight out of the Mississippi Delta, which is the northwest area of the state of Mississippi between the Mississippi River and the Yazoo River. Many people mistakenly picture the Delta as being down near the mouth of the Mississippi River, but it's actually much farther north, up near Clarksdale. If there is such a thing as the Deep South, then the Delta is the deepest South. So why did the blues come out of the Delta and not Alabama, Arkansas, Tennessee? You know, the demographics and economies were all the same of those places. All of those areas had large populations of post-emancipated African Americans who became sharecroppers, tenant farmers working in cotton fields around the turn of the century. Life was hard. Music became a form of emotional expression and spiritual survival. The poverty forced musicians everywhere in the South to rely on simple instruments like the guitar and harmonica. All of that was the same across the South. But what was so different about the Delta? I've been to the Delta, and it's different. It's flat, swampy, hot, humid. There's almost no air circulating, and it's brutal, and it's isolated. You can see it and feel it. I think the main difference between the Delta and the rest of the South is the isolation. And after the turn of the century, that meant any traditions unique to the area could develop without any outside interference. That's the difference. Now, they weren't cut off and trapped in the Delta because there were plenty of rivers, railroads, and highways that could take people anywhere they wanted to go to get out. But nobody else wanted to get in. And the birthplace of the blues was unique in that raw isolation. Now, the blues is actually two different things. Blues can refer to a major genre of American music, like blues, jazz, rock and roll, etc. However, blues can also refer to the 12-bar blues form, which is the structure of the blues, but can be applied to any music composed in practically every other genre and style available. Obviously, blues songs are going to be in blues form, but so are many rock songs, jazz songs, country songs, Tejano songs, Cajun songs. I mean, somebody could even compose an opera aria in 12-bar blues if they wanted to. The blues evolved from black field songs and work songs in the Deep South around the turn of the 20th century. It was not formally composed or written down, but learned and passed along by the memories of the traveling musicians, which makes it impossible to pinpoint an exact beginning. However, we do know that ragtime piano songs began featuring small sections within the composition that were in a 12-bar form. And around 1910, several composers began publishing them. It's difficult to know which one was actually first, but Alabama-born composer W.C. Handy billed himself as the father of the blues, and he did that when he published a piece called Memphis Blues in 1912. Since ragtime was a genre of piano, then technically 12-bar blues form began as a piano style. However, when the traveling storytellers of the Mississippi Delta began adapting the blues form in the 20s and playing it on guitar, a much more portable instrument than piano, that's when things really took off. That's when 12-bar blues became the blues. It was during the 1920s and 1930s that those pioneering traveling bluesmen were first recorded, and among them was Robert Johnson. And that's where the ghost story comes in. When he was just a kid in Mississippi, Robert Johnson learned to play the blues on harmonica and was known among local musicians as a competent player. I mean, not great, but not bad. Then he went away for a while to handle some family business, and when he returned, he was suddenly a master of the blues guitar. I mean, he could play like no one they'd ever heard before. This time, the local musicians not only took notice, they were suspicious. They reasoned that only someone who'd made a deal with the devil could learn to play that good that fast. And the legend stuck. Trading one's immortal soul to the devil in return for an earthly treasure is a 15th century German legend, and it plays perfectly into Robert Johnson's myth. As the story goes, Johnson met with the devil down at the Crossroads, which is either the intersection of highways 61 and 49 near Clarksdale or the intersection of highways 1 and 8 near Rosedale. I've heard the legend both ways. Either way, Robert Johnson handed his guitar to the devil at the Crossroads, who tuned it, played it, and handed it back. From that point forward, he could play the blues like a man possessed, perhaps literally. He recorded 3 specific original songs that also folded right into the legend: Crossroad Blues, Me and the Devil Blues, and Hellhound on My Trail. The fact that he died young, crawling on all fours and howling like a dog right on the verge of a live appearance at Carnegie Hall only added fuel to the fires of his supposed damnation. Now, I actually have my own theory as to how Robert Johnson was able to go away and come back with insane talent on guitar. I firmly believe, he practiced. But that's just me. By the way, Robert Johnson was also the beginning of something else creepy called the 27 curse. He was 27 years old when he died unexpectedly, and there's been an unusual number of young, famous musicians who also died at that exact same age, such as Brian Jones, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, many others. Robert Johnson was raised as a sharecropper in the Delta, and he hated it. Rather than continue along that difficult back-breaking path, he chose to be a traveling blues man instead. And he ranged all over the Delta, going from town to town by hitching rides, cars, trucks, or even tractors, hopping on trains, or simply walking. Upon arrival in a new town, he would head straight for the barber shop if it was daytime, or juke joint if it was night, stand on the sidewalk, play the blues. Usually a crowd would gather, and he played and sang for his supper, his boarding, and, his companionship. Therefore, his fame spread only in the black communities around the Delta, until a druggist in Jackson, Mississippi heard him play and arranged for him to travel to San Antonio to make some recordings. After hearing the records, music promoter John Hammond included him in a concert he'd organized at Carnegie Hall in 1938 to feature black music. Well, who's John Hammond? I mean, what's his deal? Oh, John Hammond was a descendant of the Vanderbilts, and he was just a little old record producer and talent scout who discovered, a few people like Billie Holiday, Count Basie, Bob Dylan, Aretha Franklin, Stevie Ray Vaughan, just name a couple. This concert at Carnegie Hall would have immediately put Robert Johnson on the map, but he died 4 months before the performance took place. If it were not for the 29 songs Robert Johnson recorded in those 2 different sessions in Texas, his unbelievable legacy would have never been known beyond his lifetime. Robert Johnson's untimely death on August 16, 1938, is shrouded in mystery, myth, and legend. Now, the truth is, we don't actually know exactly how or why he died, as there's no death certificate, and he was buried in an unmarked grave. But you better believe there are some juicy theories. Here are some of the best ones. Number 1, the devil came to collect. Now, one story says that the devil came to collect Robert Johnson's soul as payment for their deal at the Crossroads. Some claim Johnson was crawling on all fours and barking like a dog before he died, echoing his own lyrics in Hellhound on My Trail. His agonizing death was the devil's hand dragging him to hell. Number 2, the poisoned bottle. Now, the most widely accepted legend is that Robert Johnson was poisoned by a jealous husband. And the story goes like this. Johnson was playing at a juke joint near Greenwood, Mississippi. He allegedly flirted with or slept with the wife of the juke joint owner. The husband, in a fit of rage, handed him a whiskey bottle laced with strychnine. I don't know how you just happened to have that handy, but he did. Johnson drank from it and died a slow, painful death over 3 days, vomiting blood and howling like a dog. Number 3, the medical theory. A lot less romantic, but still kind of haunting. The medical forensics people have looked at eyewitness descriptions of his symptoms, and they believe Robert Johnson likely died of either congenital syphilis or strychnine poisoning. Witnesses say he suffered convulsions and extreme pain, which fits both poisoning and late-stage syphilis, so it's kind of a toss-up. Now, when we come back, we'll take a closer look at the form of 12-bar blues and Robert Johnson's innovative blues guitar and voice. You're listening to The Tom Daniels Show. We'll be right back.
What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniels Show. What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniels Show. What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniels Show.
Welcome back to the Tom Daniels Show. I am speechless. Man, sometimes when I provide the topic to Mary Mac for an upcoming episode, I'm curious to hear what kind of music they'll come up with. And when I told them we were going to the Crossroads for this episode, I knew I was going to get blown away. Man, Mary Mac is the world's most perfect band. Now, we've been talking about blues legend Robert Johnson and the 12-bar blues. The 12-bar blues form is one of the easiest things for a non-musician to hear in music. It requires no training and no talent to be an expert. If you can count to 12, and if you can tell whether two things match or are different, then you're set. Here's how it works. Any song in 12-bar blues form has each verse comprised of 12 measures, or 12 bars, that are divided up into 3 phrases each, 4 measures per phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 12 measures. The first 2 phrases match each other, and the third phrase is different, so it has an A-A-B form. Now, using the lyrics of Robert Johnson's song Crossroads Blues, I can show you. Here's an example. Phrase 1, which is A. I went to the crossroads, fell down on my knees. And now phrase 2, which is also A. I went to the crossroads, fell down on my knees. And now phrase 3, which is B. Ask the Lord above, have mercy, save poor Bob if you please. Now, you see it? I mean, the first 2 phrases match, and the third phrase is different. That's A-A-B. This 3-phrase pattern is repeated throughout the entire song. And if you did nothing but spend the entire song counting the measures and phrases, you'd still have a productive and rewarding listening experience. Now, there's more sophisticated harmonic structures to consider within the form if you understand a little music theory, but you can enjoy the blues for the rest of your life perfectly fine with what I just showed you. As I mentioned, every single verse in the song Crossroad Blues is in the same 12-bar blues form. It's really easy to follow. Plus, it works with the other songs of Robert Johnson, as well as the songs of Son House, Muddy Waters, Lightnin' Hopkins, Howlin' Wolf, Willie Dixon, T-Bone Walker, John Lee Hooker, B.B. King, Ma Rainey, Bessie Smith, all of them. Perhaps the most magnificent thing about the 12-bar blues is its utter simplicity, and that's why it's so incredibly versatile. It's just as easy to spot the 12-bar blues form in songs by Robert Johnson as it is in songs by Hank Williams, Carl Perkins, Ray Charles, Louis Armstrong, the Allman Brothers Band, even the Beatles. They all wrote masterpieces in 12-bar blues form. So what makes this so different from other musical forms? The difference is the 12-bar part. Now, most songs in Western music, sacred or secular, silly or artful, naturally fall into a 16-bar pattern in 4 phrases. Our ears tend to favor songs that are balanced and symmetrical this way, and the 4 phrases are either AABA, AABB, or ABAB. Now, probably more than 90% of all Western music is composed this way, but not the 12-bar blues. The blues are kind of jarring to the senses because they're missing a phrase. They've got 3 phrases instead of 4, and they're missing some measures, 12 measures instead of 16. And when you're subconsciously expecting a song to flow into that 4th balanced phrase, it's kind of a jolt when it's suddenly not there, as if you had the rug pulled out from under your ears. For this reason, any song in 12-bar blues was composed that way intentionally. Songs don't just spill out of a composer's head and randomly fall into an accidental 12-bar blues form. The composer chose to follow the 12-bar blues form purposefully and sticks to it throughout the creative process. But remember, Robert Johnson is not known for innovating the 12-bar blues form, since it was already there when he came around. He's known for innovating the blues guitar and voice. And when people first hear Robert Johnson's recordings, they usually can't believe they're just listening to one man playing guitar. His use of the slide and complex rhythms gave him an uncanny ability to sound like multiple musicians all playing at once. It's a really creepy effect. Now, at this point, I need to explain I will not be playing any examples from the recordings of Robert Johnson because they're not in the public domain yet. There is a short episode of the Tom Daniels Show called Fair Use Doctrine that explains all of this, but for now, all I can do is talk about his sound without letting you hear it. Sorry about that. Robert Johnson played what's called a steady bass guitar style, which means that the right-hand thumb only picks a singular root bass note, not a bass line. The rest of the right-hand fingers each pluck an individual string at the same time, which gives the whole right hand a claw-style motion. Imagine holding up your hands like monster claws, like you're going to scare somebody. And now imagine plucking guitar strings with your hand in the exact same position. The whole right hand is held with all the fingers in a specific position as the strings are plucked. And it's very similar to the claw hand used to pick cotton. My grandmother once showed me how this hand position is vital for picking cotton, because once the petals on the cotton boll open up and peel back, they harden into very sharp points. Now, they'll stab you if you just grab a bowl of cotton. The claw hand position allows your fingers to grab onto the soft cotton in between the sharp points and pluck it without getting stabbed. Cotton pickers learn the necessity of keeping their hands in this claw position in order to pick cotton quickly without getting cut up to pieces. In my opinion, this is a perfectly natural guitar plucking hand position for a former Mississippi sharecropper. Sometimes Robert Johnson tuned the guitar in non-standard ways, which allowed his left hand to slide around in unique positions on the guitar neck, playing chords and individual melodic notes simultaneously. Now, this trick is likely what makes it sound like two guitars being played at the same time, and that was the main part of his iconic sound that created the whole supernatural legend. I mean, even people who saw him play live were convinced that a ghost guitar was somehow playing along with him that they couldn't see. And even today, accomplished guitarists remain amazed that only one guitar could sound like that. And then there's his voice. First, think of a piano keyboard with white and black keys, and then picture a white key with a black key on either side. Got 3 notes, black, white, black. Well, what if you wanted to hear a note that was somewhere in between the black key and the white key? I mean, how do you play that on piano? Well, you can't. But you can definitely do it with your voice. You can easily sing pitches that are in between standard pitches, and this is what gives the human voice its trademark crying sound. Robert Johnson made a career out of living in the land between standard pitches. And oddly enough, these in-between pitches are musically known as blue notes. And doesn't it make perfect sense that the blues would be loaded with blue notes? However, there's a very fine line between singing blue notes and just singing out of tune. There's a lot of highly sophisticated vocal control needed in order to make your voice sound blue instead of off-pitch. And this is another area where Robert Johnson excelled. He always made his voice walk the line between singing and crying, and it's spine-chilling, to say the least. And to top it all off, Robert Johnson could bend his guitar strings or use a bottle slide in order to reproduce those same blue notes on his guitar. His voice cried, and his guitar cried right along with it. It was the sound that created both a legend and a ghost story. And the best part is that you don't need musical training to hear it. I mean, his eerie sound is not buried like an Easter egg deep in the song. I mean, it's right out in the open for anybody's ears. When you listen to Robert Johnson, listen for the frequent appearance of a second ghost guitar. Listen for a crying voice that mimics a crying guitar and vice versa. However, be mindful that the crying is only used as an effect. It's not the dominant sound of the whole song. His recordings don't sound like a man openly sobbing and weeping through the whole song. Rather, it's an occasional phrase here or there where an unexpected word gives it the soul that we recognize. And when you listen to any Robert Johnson recording, you can hear every technique I've described, all right in the first verse. You don't have to wait for it or hunt for it. It's right there. Steady bass, claw hand plucking, slide guitar that sounds like a weeping voice that sounds like a slide guitar, blue notes, and that uncanny sound of a ghost guitar coming out of nowhere. Many times, Robert Johnson will end a vocal phrase on a particular note and then punctuate that single note by plucking it on the guitar. Now, some Robert Johnson songs are good examples of the flexibility of the 12-bar blues form. If you tried to score them and count out the number of beats and number of measures, they won't add up right. Some of the phrases are missing beats and measures, and others have too many beats and measures, and it would be a train wreck to try these songs with a band. And the only way a performer can pull this off is to be playing and singing alone, as was the case with Robert Johnson. However, this is definitely not an indication that Johnson was ignorant of the form, but it's highly indicative of someone performing interpretively. Now, in the 19th century, classical music was performed this exact same way. A composer like Chopin would write the notes on a page, but leave it up to the individual performer as to their own personal interpretation of the steady beaten style. Therefore, each musician who plays Chopin plays him differently, which is exactly what Chopin wanted. Robert Johnson works the exact same way. 3 different performances of any particular song would have sounded 3 different ways depending on his mood. Now, some of his songs straight up are a musical nightmare and are really uncomfortable to listen to late at night alone with the lights out. Robert Johnson takes his cues from his own disturbing lyrics for making both his voice and his guitar howl. There are howls of pain as well as howls of pursuit, and some songs can be real chillers. Robert Johnson did not invent the blues, as he came along too late to even be considered for the early development of the blues. By the time he was first recorded in 1936, all of the format known as 12-bar blues was already firmly established. However, what Robert Johnson brought to the table was an eerie mastery of the guitar that transformed standard blues into something haunting and intense, which would directly inspire generations of guitarists in the 50s, 60s, and beyond. Simply put, Robert Johnson was more than a blues pioneer. He was the guitar pioneer. His style permeated the entire blues-based approach to rock and roll. Robert Johnson gave the early rock musicians a kind of spiritual grounding, and he was like a direct ancestor. Just as he drew from field hollers and Delta bluesmen before him, rock musicians saw the blues as a river that they could enter, and Robert Johnson was the deepest part of that river. Robert Johnson's music is drenched in emotion, loneliness, fear, lust, longing, defiance. He was channeling raw energy, and his songs weren't just entertainment. They were experience. Johnson tapped into something primal and true. He lived fast, died young, and left behind a mysterious, nearly mythic legacy that all comes across in the music. Now, before I go, Mary Mac and I want to leave you with a little ghost story that we cooked up just for the occasion. It's called The Delta Don't Forget.
They say the Delta don't forget. It remembers sweat. It remembers sorrow, and it remembers music, especially the kind that don't come from the living. Somewhere outside Clarksdale, Mississippi, where highways 49 and 61 cross, there's a patch of land people avoid after dark. To most, it's just an old intersection, but to others, it's the Crossroads, the place where a man named Robert Johnson traded more than just a song. Back in the 1930s, Robert was just another young man with a guitar and a dream bigger than the Delta sky. Folks said he couldn't play worth a lick, until one day he vanished. Gone like smoke in a juke joint. And when he came back, his fingers danced like the devil himself was pulling the strings. They say Robert took that old guitar down to the crossroads at midnight, waited until the wind stopped. And when the moon turned pale, a tall man stepped out of the shadows, dressed in black, eyes like funeral dirt. He tuned Robert's guitar, whispered something only the dead should hear, and vanished into the dark. that night on, Robert Johnson played like a man possessed. But the fame didn't last, and neither did he. They buried him in a shallow grave no one agrees on. But the music, it stayed. Truckers say when they pass that crossroads after midnight, they see a figure standing at the edge of the road. Thin, quiet, guitar on his back, he never moves, just watches. And sometimes their radios switch on by themselves, playing a Robert Johnson song, but slowed down, warped, like it's coming from the bottom of a grave. They say if you leave a fresh set of guitar strings where the roads meet, by morning they're gone. No footprints, no tire tracks, just silence. Except for the faintest sound of slide guitar coming out of nowhere. Because the Delta don't forget, and the Crossroads, it never sleeps. Keep listening. Keep learning.
Thank you, everybody. This has been the Tom Daniels Show. Keep listening. Keep learning.